You come for the education and you stay for the Dutch oven. Welcome to OnEducation, part of the On Podcast Media Network. My name is Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We're going to talk about how distance learning is going worldwide. We will debate who should win the EdTech March Madness tournament. And we will discuss whether teachers and students prefer face-to-face learning or e-learning. And our guest this week is the president and founder of the StartEdUp Foundation, Don Wettrick.
I shaved Jacob's head today.
No. What?
Yeah. Well, no, because we can't. His hair was just like everywhere.
Okay.
And
I thought you got like lice or something.
No.
No.
We can't go and get him.
Tragic.
We can't go to the hairdressers, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, all right, dude, you're getting the daddy treatment.
Yeah.
And I brought out the clippers, and he was all pumped.
Yeah.
And
he was excited.
And he looks good. I put a picture on the Twitters, and
nice.
you know, he's cute. He's a cute kid, no matter what he's.
You know that I can cut hair, right? Have I ever told you that?
No.
For being a bald dude, I used to cut my wife's hair. She goes to hairdresser and stuff now. Yep. Some of her fancy haircuts. And my youngest son, my older son, has these locks of
he's got long hair.
Long locks that aren't going to be cut ever. You know, he's like Samson. But my youngest son, he needed a haircut really bad. And I told my wife, I'm like, I'll just do it. No problem. So yeah, I cut hair. It's one of the secret talents. I didn't actually get any training for it. I just have a knack for it. It's weird.
So Isaac didn't want his haircut, so I trimmed his bangs, and basically what I did was I just brushed the hair down straight above to his eyes, and then just went snip, 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 right across his eyebrows, and I'm like, all right, done.
Got it.
It's funny, all of the things that people are doing. I bought a Dutch oven, my man, because I'm going to make bread.
Nice. What's a Dutch oven exactly?
So a Dutch oven is like a cast iron pot.
Like double-sided, right? Like this? Or no?
No, it doesn't nest inside. It's just a big cast iron pot.
Okay.
And you can, they're really good for like baking bread because they have even heat distribution.
Okay.
And so you can put like bread in, like a ball of dough inside it, and when it gives off the steam is going to stay inside of it because it's sealed really well. But it's also like a little oven. So like when steam distributes in an oven, the oven's big, right? And it vents, and so the steam doesn't kind of stay there. Well, in a little Dutch oven, the steam stays like inside the Dutch oven. There you go.
Very cool.
So you see the things you learn on education that you weren't even. You listen.
I didn't even know that I needed to know that.
You come for the education and you stay for the Dutch oven. Boy, oh boy,
that's so weird.
It's so good.
The things that we pick up here. Yeah. Talk about staying at home, man. I was the other night, I was super bored.
I know.
And I was like, I'm just going to get a playlist up and just start playing guitar on Facebook. Yep. Mostly I wanted to do it for my family, especially like my mom and dad. They're so isolated, and they live in rural Roswell, New Mexico. And I don't even know. Obviously, they haven't had any visitors, and it's just them too. So I was kind of doing it just for their entertainment. But yeah, it was hilarious. There was a bunch of people on. Song requests were coming in. I was like, let's play some songs. Let's do some stuff, because otherwise it can be depressing, like we talked about last week. So we want to try to do what we can to enjoy each other's company, even if it's virtually. You know,
I listened to you sing in Spanish.
Yeah.
It made me happy.
Those are my jams.
It was fun. It was a song. We talked about this song before. This song that has kind of like a bit of a patter to it.
Me gustas tú. Yeah.
That's right.
That's it. Yep.
It's about something. Like it's something in You Are Too or something like that.
Yeah. It means I like you.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. See? It's a good song.
I remembered it. I was listening and I'm like, I know that
song. Yeah.
Glenn is talking about that song before, I think.
I think
it might
I
have
talked
come up on the podcast.
on this podcast and that one podcast too, the one about your favorite songs.
That's where I heard it.
Yeah.
You played it on P3 with Noah.
The personal playlist podcast. Yes. Yeah.
There's where I knew it from. It wasn't on this podcast. It was on Noah Daniel's podcast.
It was on some podcast somewhere.
we'll give a strong endorsement to P3.
It's so cool.
We've both been on it. It's a very good podcast.
Very, very good.
People should go listen to it in this age of social distancing. It'd be a nice. It would warm your heart.
Absolutely.
Totally. So, today was, I guess it was day one for you in your district for
in Minnesota,
like officially teaching online.
Exactly. Statewide, it was our first official day. And I guess it happened in Pennsylvania too, and maybe even other states. I'm not sure that it was the first day back officially for a bunch of us. And I wanted to give a shout out to all of the parents out there who are helping their kids get going with all of the distance learning work, the e-learning work, and being basically that teacher, as far as in the home classroom there. And it's a tough job. I mean, we are teachers, and the stuff that our kids have to do as far as the thing goes, and to keep them motivated and keep them going and doing their stuff, is very difficult. So shout out to the parents, and of course, shout out to all of you guys, the teachers out there that got through either today was your first day, or you've already been doing this for a week or so or more. And it's a difficult thing to do. Like we talked about last week, it's not like we made the choice to do this. It's not like we chose to teach in an online setting, in an online school, and neither did our students. And so we're trying to make the best of it. And I think people are kicking butt, learning new skills, really putting their best foot forward. And I could definitely see that today, both on Twitter and on, as far as locally, as far as our emails and our contacts there too. But what also was kind of crazy, Mike, is I don't think that the internet and EdTech in general was ready for all of us to move to this online format. Because Google Drive, YouTube, and all of the EdTech companies, meltdowns today, tons of errors, servers breaking down. They weren't ready for this. I mean, obviously not. None of us were ready to transition to an online environment at this pace,
Right. So, two things. The Ontario school boards start next week. So, a lot of people, if you're listening from Ontario, you got emails. So, listen, if you haven't checked your email in a couple of weeks, you should go check your email, because you
got to go to work.
You probably got a bunch of email today, because I know that my wife got at least 4 or 5 like really serious emails about like moving forward and how to move forward and the steps. Thankfully, they had made some of these plans in advance, good or bad. The government of Ontario signed a deal with D2L to basically give bright space to every school board in Ontario. So every school board in Ontario has a bright space kind of access. So every teacher can access D2L now. So they've basically given every teacher, a
learning management system,
a full-fledged learning management system, not like a Google Classroom, which Google Classroom's okay, but we've talked about it before. It's not the same as Schoology or D2L or Canvas or a bunch of these other ones. But so Cheryl has to reach out to all of her parents and find out what the students' technology needs are. They made a really good point of also acknowledging that not every teacher is equipped for distance learning.
That's so true.
And they said, we acknowledge that you may not have even like Wi-Fi access. So they actually made a point of not just talking about devices, which was really cool, but they also mentioned, we will help you get internet access if that's something that you don't have.
Have to do that. You got to do that.
And so that was really cool in that email. So So, we had a little kind of family meeting this morning when Cheryl started to get the emails and we realized, oh, this is happening now. That, there's going to be times when daddy's in his office and we've set up a little desk for Cheryl in the bedroom. So daddy's going to be in the office and mom's going to be in the bedroom and both of our doors are going to be closed and Isaac's babysitting and, because we're going to be in calls and meetings and we've got to go to work.
Yes.
And we're lucky because we have like a 4-bedroom house and I can imagine, to be honest, all of these different situations. It's funny when you start thinking through all of the scenarios of different people in their lives and what's going on and how that might be affected. We ordered pizza last night. And we don't normally always think about where we get it from. We just you just kind of order pizza. No, okay. There's 3 or 4 places and we kind of just whatever one we choose at the time, I guess. But we consciously ordered it from kind of the local singular store pizza place, not like one
support of these local businesses. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, we got it delivered because we wanted, someone to come that probably needed money because he still has to work.
Yeah.
But, and we gave him a big tip and we're like, thanks for the pizza. Yes. And, hopefully this helps,
Keep on keeping on, man.
Yeah. And
some people are still grinding out there. That's what the whole thing is there's a bunch of people who still are, the essential workers. Obviously, we're talking about our nurses, doctors, and anybody else that's called on to duty that you still have to work, police officers and whoever else. I mean, there's a lot of you guys out there that still have to go to work, and put yourself and your livelihood, on the line. And then there's people who are still grinding it out, pizza deliveries, anybody that works within restaurants that are still cooking the food and doing all of the things that we need, grocery stores, and everybody else, gas stations, so on and so forth. Those people still go to work and they are out there exposing themselves to this,
These minimum wage grocery store people are freaking heroes now. Like they are heroes. Like they get paid nothing and they are so necessary right now that it's not even funny.
Yeah.
If you think the world would break down, if, other things went away, imagine the calamity if grocery stores closed because people couldn't work there or weren't allowed to work there or whatever. It would be
That's when you have revolution, man, and stuff starts getting crazy.
Yeah, things would get real. We'd be turned into it'd be real life video games.
It'd be one of those crazy but dark video games.
So it's funny that you mentioned that EdTech wasn't necessarily prepared for all this. It was funny because Twitch went down today too, and I don't think I've ever seen Twitch go down.
No.
The whole thing crashed. So it's obviously like streaming is way up. I'll use this to also plug, the Participate live stream because Steve and I have been streaming on it all week last week, all week the week before too. And this is our 3rd week now streaming on twitch.tv/inside participate, and we're doing a lot of really cool stuff there and you should go watch us, but we almost didn't do it today because Twitch crashed.
Crashing
is nuts.
because we're all living on the net.
The only system I haven't had trouble with is Zoom. So they're the
they're the heroes right now.
Yeah, I guess so.
They're pulling through.
They're keeping the whole world talking right now, I guess. So I'll give them credit for that at least.
Yeah. Boy. I was thinking about that as we I did the intro. I saw someone had posted this, actually tagged me in this EdTech Madness March Madness tournament because there is no March Madness right now.
Right.
So they did an EdTech March Madness bracket.
Sweet.
And they developed 2 different sides to this bracket. It's an uneven bracket with some people that get buys. And I'm looking at it right now, there's 13 different slots. as far as on the
So
bracket
go through
itself.
go through the seeding.
Here's the seeding. Okay, these are EdTech single elimination tournament, the number 1 seed. Or should I go backwards?
Go backwards.
Yeah, I should go backwards because then we can go to number 1.
Suspense.
Number 13, actually barely breaking into the tournament, is Pear Deck, which I was like, I looked at it and I was like, well, why is it Nearpod on here? But Pear Deck and Nearpod are comparable, or they're competitors in the same marketplace.
Yeah.
And Pear Deck did make this one, and Nearpod just didn't make the tournament. They made the NIT. We call that. I don't know if you know what the NIT is. It's the other bracket that nobody ever watches. They made the NIT. Yes, it's the consolation tournament. And coming in at number 12, then playing in the 5-12 matchup, Osmo. How about that? Yeah, the Osmo company. Yeah,
Osmo.
Number 11 is Screencast-O-Matic, my favorite freaking screencasting tool. I can't even believe it made the tournament. And they made it as a number 11 seed. I'm pumped for them. Nice. I always tell people to use it. Number 10 is Adobe Spark. Some of these are newer tools that we've been talking about that are now becoming the norm. Like everybody's using them.
I think that's on the bests video.
Yes, for sure. Yep. Number 9, I can't even believe they even made this tournament, is Moodle. But it's a long-standing EdTech tool that never goes away.
Unfortunately.
It's free.
Moodle's the worst.
Oh, God, it's terrible. Number 8 is Edpuzzle. We use it a lot. Fantastic tool.
To be fair, I could see Nearpod slotting in at 9. Higher than Pear Deck.
For sure. That shouldn't be Moodle there.
And whatever. I mean, remember, Nearpod owns vocabulary too. I mean,
I know. And now, okay, anyway, we'll talk about it in a bit. All right. Number 8 was Edpuzzle. Number 7 is WeVideo. WeVideo, where you could edit video without actually having to use any software. So it's great for Chromebooks.
Free right now for everybody.
Fantastic. Number 6, our favorite learning management system, Schoology. Number 5 is, where the heck am I? Seesaw. Freaking Seesaw above Schoology. There, talk about a tool that nobody even knew about. It was kind of very niche 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's number 5. Number 4 is Screencastify. It's the screencasting tool that's a Chrome extension, part of the Chrome family here, and it's super easy to use. Number 3 is Zoom. That's insane. Zoom would have never made any EdTech list. Not even last year, Mike.
No, I agree. Not an EdTech list. It's not used.
Top 50 tools from last year, even in, let's say we would have done this for top 50 tools in November or something like that. We would have not named Zoom on there, which is that shows you something that's going on here. Number 2 is Flipgrid. We totally agree with that. And number 1 is the Google Suite, which it's a monstrosity. So, what else is not on this list is interesting? What is missing?
There's a couple that are that would really stand out to me. I love the look on your
Google's main competitor. Yeah, where's Microsoft?
So Microsoft Teams isn't on this list, or OneNote.
Or Microsoft, I don't know what they would call themselves, because this is a suite package.
Office 365.
Office 365, which includes Minecraft.
Minecraft Education.
I don't know.
Isn't on this list.
Just by itself could be one of the competitors on this list, I think. Sure. Or we believe that.
So Zoom is really out of place on this.
It's crazy.
Our hot takes, I guess, are that Zoom, 3 months ago, Zoom wouldn't have been on an EdTech list. No. Students, listen, folks, if you didn't know, students aren't allowed to use Zoom. It's not certified for it's not COPA compliant. Is that not correct?
I actually saw some things that they posted, Mike, that they are. So we'll have to look more into that, because before we even were going to use it, we went to their site, and all we can do is trust what they actually post on the thing. And it did say that they were, and maybe that just recently happened. You know what I mean? So that was a very important thing for us to adopt that tool, as far as in a K through 12 district. So yeah.
I mean, Moodle's ridiculous.
Moodle's dumb on here. Come on.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like I would put like Canvas. If you wanted to put an LMS in here, I'd put Canvas above Moodle. But like, I mean, Nearpod needs to be on this list, so like Moodle can leave for Nearpod, and an
8-9 matchup of Edpuzzle versus Nearpod is a good matchup. I like that.
We should write our own brackets.
That's true. Yeah, and I saw that it's strange because, like I said, it's 13 teams. I would have made it 16. You know what I mean? And then have 2 even brackets, go 1 versus 8 on each side, and that way you have 2 ones. You know, kind of on the different in the different divisions there. So
let's carry this through here.
Okay.
Edpuzzle versus Moodle.
Edpuzzle, not even close.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Screencastify versus Pear Deck. I'd say Pear Deck.
Me too.
One of them has to be on here. So if Nearpod's not on here, then Pear Deck has to move forward on that.
Pear Deck is a 13 seed, and I'm like against Screencastify, which is a 4 seed.
Yeah. Crazy. Again,
Pear Deck.
This is like in a different world. Screencastify would probably be lower.
Screencastify, there's a ton of competitors. I mean, we saw Screencast-O-Matic is on this list, but I mean, there's this thing called Loom. There's tons of things that you can use for screencasting tools. So anyway.
Seesaw versus Osmo.
Oh, that's such a weird battle.
My problem, like if we're thinking like right now, I don't like Osmo on this because Osmo is a device. It requires you to actually, have it.
Have the device. Yep,
Seesaw. So we have a ton of Osmo in our house.
Yeah.
But we don't, like our students don't. So it's not like we can do it with our students at home. So I would take Seesaw here.
Seesaw right now too.
So Flipgrid. So WeVideo versus Adobe Spark. That's actually a really good matchup.
That is a very good matchup.
Close.
I kind of want to go Adobe because of the creation aspect, but video is also a creation tool in that it's a video editing tool.
I would be fine with Adobe Spark here.
Me too.
And that's Schoology versus Screencast-O-Matic. I'd have to take Schoology.
You have to take Schoology. Yeah. Okay. You have to.
So now we get into the final 8.
Yeah, this is the Elite 8.
Now we have
Google.
Zoom. So we have Zoom versus Schoology.
Schoology.
Okay. So, but here's a good one: Flipgrid versus Adobe Spark.
Oh, God,
I have to take Flipgrid.
Me too.
Yeah. And so we have Seesaw versus Pear Deck. Ooh,
Seesaw versus Pear Deck.
That's a rough one because Pear Deck should be a lot higher in this, or like.
Yeah. I almost want to take Seesaw.
Okay, I'll give you that. And then Edpuzzle versus Google Suite.
Google Suite.
Google
Suite for sure. Yeah.
So now we're Google versus Seesaw.
Google just dominates.
Yeah.
Over it because they're just so all encompassing. So I would say Google there. They move on to the finals.
And the Flipgrid versus
Schoology battle.
I'm taking Flipgrid.
Me too. Schoology's gonna be pissed.
I would have called you out on that if you didn't.
I love Flipgrid.
Like you shill.
No, I totally agree. I love Flipgrid. Yeah. So Flipgrid versus Google.
The way we all thought it was going to end up.
Yeah. The little tiny company in Minnesota versus the monstrosity that is Google. Yeah, you know what? It kind of feels like a Duke versus Princeton matchup.
You didn't use the. Yeah, Glenn wouldn't use the biblical analogy. This is the David versus Goliath.
The David versus Goliath. The Duke versus. Actually, I'm trying to pick a team. What was the team that Steph Curry? Liberty. I think that was the name of the team, or something like that. Little tiny school that nobody ever heard of. That's what it feels like. It's hard to go against Google there, but I think we should pick Flipgrid as the overall winner.
I would take Flipgrid.
Me too.
Google's boring.
Yeah, so you said that.
Said it a million times.
You said that a year and a half ago. Google was boring. And we had a discussion about Google was boring. Microsoft was...
Come at me, Google.
Overrated? No, I can't remember. What were they? There was 3 things you said in that tweet.
Google is boring.
Okay. Well, Flipgrid, congratulations.
Boring. Yeah, Flipgrid.
You just won the OnEducation podcast EdTech Madness April 2020.
The bracket.
Coronavirus tournament.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Well, that was fun.
That was actually really interesting. That was a good thank you, Tom Brandt, for posting that, tagging us in it, and I'm sure you had way better reasons of why you chose whatever, because he has a whole explanation of why they chose specific tools versus each other. We just went with our gut.
Yeah, Moodle sucks. You're still gonna say that. Moodle's awful. I remember using Moodle in university and
it's terrible.
Hating every second of it. It's just the worst.
Terrible. So
all right.
There was a great tweet today.
There was a great tweet today.
And it's going to continue. I think people are like, they get riled up when you start saying stuff like this.
Oh, it triggered.
People start getting red-faced.
Crazy. It makes me so happy watching.
They start growling.
Okay, so
set it all up for us.
So our very good friend Jeremy Williams, great teacher, awesome educator, director of an international private school in Dubai. So just waking up this morning to probably 300 or 400 notifications after I retweeted his tweet.
Me too.
It went crazy, which was awesome. And I'll read some of the thread here because I think there's a really interesting context. So he wrote, the question was simple. Teachers, would you prefer e-learning over brick and mortar school? So this is a question to teachers, not to students, not to parents, teachers. Their response was 29.4% yes to preferring e-learning. 29.4 was no, so equal yes and no.
Equal.
And 41% maybe.
Ooh,
so
I like the maybe choice.
Not a definitive no, which is what the Twitterati goes crazy for, is saying no, and not a definitive yes, which would be interesting in and of itself. And then so here's his caveats in his thread. It's important to know that several of our main teacher accommodations have poor Wi-Fi. I think if this was better, the results for e-learning would be... So he's actually saying that it's skewed by bad technology.
Yeah, it could have been better. I mean, in other words, it could have been more yeses. That's what he's saying.
That's right. Our staff is very young. Several of our married/family teachers said they loved having more time at home. This is...
interesting.
Super interesting. Many felt more ownership was placed on the students. I don't know how much of this is based on so he's wondering how much of it is like an international perspective versus and I'll say this because I can, whether this is an skewed versus a North American context where both in the United States and Canada, teachers' unions are very strong. And, this idea that anything that kind of disrupts the status quo is a little bit more... I'm not being like super anti-union there, but I'm just saying that, teachers like things the way they like things. We've acknowledged this, and that's why people just went rage monster over this a little bit. So the fifth thread, or the fifth tweet in this, I wonder how the market for e-learning will change. And then he's realizing he's getting responses. So he writes, stop being so ethnocentric for a second. How many people globally could get access to a better education through this delivery? The answer is tons, is the actual answer to this question. And so, Jeremy has a great, and it's funny because he actually talked about this when we had him on.
Yes.
He talked about how Dubai and international education is a lot better than, you think it's terrible because you think the Middle East is terrible. And the reality, friends, is that it's not. And that
especially at this place, yes,
right. So it's interesting because he's calling out a legitimate thing that he sees a lot. He's there and you're here, and I hope we can just trust that Jeremy Williams knows what he's talking about when it comes to international education. And then how does this trickle up to higher education, which is a good question. So So there's lots going on here. There's so much going on here. And I actually had a really good conversation with Jeremy in DMs about it this morning. He brought up some super fascinating kind of ideas that are worth kind of bringing up here as well. And that's that, first off, and we've sort of talked about this, that if this isn't seen at least as an opportunity to consider options, to weigh the pros and the cons and weigh what worked and didn't work, and then hopefully take some of the things that we tried that were new and apply those to what we did before, like to make some changes, I think we're missing an opportunity here. So, like, I mean, this isn't saying that after, in a post-coronavirus world, Jeremy is going to turn his entire school into an e-learning school. It's ridiculous.
No,
that's not what he's saying. So anyone who tweeted that was just dumb. Like we're not saying change everything to e-learning. So that was the one thing. And the other thing was that, I mean, it's just, you know, if economics aren't a factor and you really weigh your personal situation, and that's what he asked for, you know, this is, I mean, the idea of like a 4-day work week, for example, and I kind of banged around this idea in my head of a 4-day, you know, hard instructional time and a 5th day that is more free. So you don't go to school, you stay home and you work on whatever it is that you learn, like a genius hour, but like, let's not call it a genius. This is like a genius day.
Genius day.
Right? So think
just
about
lots more options.
Think about it this way. Jeremy said, think about it this way. If the schools were all closed and you weren't paying for that extra day of like electricity and utilities and like maintenance and like all of that stuff, you know, in the singular day, it doesn't mean a whole lot. But over the course of a year, that's probably like, especially for a big school board, like a Toronto district school board has like, I don't know, a couple 100,000 students, couple 500 schools. We're talking probably of saving a couple $1 million a year in money. You know, what do you do with that money? Well, maybe you pay teachers more. You know, why?
Yeah, I was thinking about just the flexibility that things like e-learning gives you, and you don't have to do it like you just described all the time.
No.
You rethink the way that things actually look. Then there's some classes that are basically they're flex learning classrooms where a student does have to attend 2 or 3 days a week, something like that. They're currently doing it before any of this happened.
Youth
happens all over the place
this all the time. Young Olympian kids like that are participating, like that are training, you know, every day of the week. You know, this is something we do all of the time.
Yeah, it's just not the norm. And so when you break from the norm, I saw some people just calling, like going crazy and going, anybody that thinks yes
should quit being a teacher.
They should rethink being a teacher. And I was like,
listen,
come on.
Anyone that listen. Anyone that can't have a mature freaking debate about an important topic should quit being a teacher. Just stop for us all, because you need to be able to have discourse without losing your freaking minds, people. Get it together. He wasn't talking about abolishing the school system. He was talking about just thinking outside the box in a time when we need to apply some critical thinking and outside the box ideas. Oh, you people, get a hold of yourselves. The rage machine just went loose on this tweet.
One of my favorite responses was by Lynn Rice Skozavava. Sorry, I'm going to mispronounce you, Lynn Rice. You're awesome. I love your response. She said, ask any group of teachers practically any yes, no, maybe question, and it'll pie like this.
Right.
We're at a good split. It's totally that. Yeah. I mean, it's so true. And really what it does is what you just finished saying, Mike. No one's saying that we should do this full time. Isn't that even what Jeremy was saying? He's not even proposing that. He just wanted to get some feedback, and he thought it was an interesting result for us to discuss. And someone wrote there, a guy that is always wanting to fire some people up. I'm not going to call out who is it, but he basically said, let him try this after 6 weeks. See if they have the same answer. It's like, what it is just basically people saying, hey, I would like some flexibility in my schedule. That's really what some of these people are asking for. Some of us don't enjoy this. Obviously, this is not for us. That might be, that's okay. But just the discussion to discuss it and see, could there be ways to be able to make school calendars? We've talked about that. And then the school days and weeks flexible so that they can accommodate all kinds of things. Like you just described some things as far as money savings. I was thinking about at the high school level, secondary level, where you could do internships, like where you could actually go to a place of work to really do a full internship day, not just a couple of hours, have connections to the community. You could do community service on that 5th day, all kinds of stuff. There's so many great ideas that you could do on that 5th day, including e-learning on that day on your own, as far as like you just talked about. But to destroy it right away, it's like, come on, people.
It was exactly what I expected.
Exactly.
To be perfectly honest, I retweeted with a smile on my face.
Yep.
Knowing what was going to happen when I did it. And completely having Jeremy's back if it got stupid. And I've kind of, the one reply that I thought was funny is that someone wrote like, this would require a major systematic change in society and government. I'm like,
sure.
Cool. Like, I feel like you made the case for it, my friend. So let's go. It was pretty funny because that's the only one I hard replied to, because I was like, yeah, okay.
Yes.
I mean, all right, let's
do this.
Right. I was like, is this a bad thing? Because clearly we need societal and systematic, governmental changes in the way we teach. I think that. So I'm all for it. Yeah. Anyways, Twitter, you didn't disappoint today. Thanks for the great tweet, Jeremy, and thanks for the Rage Monsters came out and did what the Rage Monsters do, and it was awesome, and it was such a cool thing to talk about. So thanks for the content, Jeremy Williams. Follow him on Twitter. We'll link him in the show notes. You should go find him if you haven't met him or connected with him. You should do that because he's pretty great. When we come back, we're going to talk to our good friend Don Wettrick. So stay with us.
OnEducation is brought to you by Fidgets. Fidgets are interactive USB sensors that bring your code to life. There's no soldering or wiring required. Simply plug in a Fidget sensor, write code in your favorite language, and watch your ideas come alive. Fidgets are used by thousands of STEM professionals globally and are now available for computer science students. Simply go to bit.ly Fidgets on Education to get your introductory kit that includes a free sensor worth over $50. That's bit.ly Fidgets on Education.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Our guest this week is a friend and someone we both really look up to. Don Wettrick is an author and speaker. He's a podcast host and the president and co-founder of the StartEdUp Foundation. Welcome to the podcast, Don.
Thanks, guys. I'm excited to be back on.
Really excited. And it's funny because you mentioned being back, because I remember the first time you were on the podcast, you had just talked to the mooch, to Anthony Scaramucci. And we talked about that experience because, like, he was, especially at that time, he was a pretty big name. Everyone was talking about him. Everyone knew, who this guy who no one knew, before was all of a sudden like this giant famous person. And you just had another super famous person on your podcast. And the story about how it happened and what all went down is fascinating. And I'd love you to tell it. So talk about how you landed Adam Carolla on the podcast, because I think it's great.
It's funny. You've named my two of the three of the least liked guests I've had from feedback from other people. I can't believe you have on that jerk. Ironically enough, so like I didn't. Yeah, he was gonna be in town anyway at a comedy club, and just reached out to him like, hey, if you're bored, you want to do a podcast? And I had a couple other people jump online, and then he was like, liked it and responded to it. And then I had a couple more people. I was like, hey, if anybody's online right now, like it or respond or something.
Yeah, we all piled on.
Yeah. Oh, it worked. And so he's like, sure. And then ironically enough, I mean, there are a couple of people that were like, they weren't fans. And to be fair, I didn't know a lot about him other than a few things, like, because I don't really watch a lot of TV, so I hadn't seen his things, right? I knew who he was from earlier in my adulthood. But it's funny because, like, he was super nice. Like, actually, he got early to we set up and he got there early. He's like, hey, let's go out for coffee real quick before we start the show. So it was kind of funny how much I was told how much of a jerk he was. And it was not that case at all.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then you sat down and you chatted. How long did you talk for? What are kind of the things that you talked about? I'm interested in
that was the funny thing, because he then talked about it on his podcast the next day.
Awesome. On
the fact that he, it was really nice. Like, hey, I met this guy, Don. Well, actually, he recanted the whole trip because he, left LA to do a tour, a comedy tour in Cleveland and Indianapolis. And, he was like, yeah, I did this guy's podcast. He was a teacher, super nice guy. And then his words, not mine. He didn't. He had some not nice things to say about some of the people that crashed it. So, like, I had set up in the hotel restaurant, which wasn't open because we got there in the morning. Yeah. And, we started to draw a little bit of a crowd because people, the NFL Combine was going on that weekend. So people were out celebrity watching and seeing if they could find a famous NFL player. But enough people know who Adam is. And for the most part, people left us alone. And then a couple more people were like pointing and waving and stuff. And so there was this family that, like, they weren't eating at the restaurant. They had gotten like takeout pizza and they brought it. And then in a hotel, restaurant, there's probably 80 tables. They just so happened to pick the table next to us and talk loud. So I set the gain way down, and he was so annoyed by it that he just, like, twice he stopped the podcast. He's like, I'm sorry, do they not bother you? Like, trying to, like, he knew they could hear us. And I'm like, no, man, just keep going. No, man, just keep going. So, in a lot of ways, though, it was a great opportunity because he told the story of how he just found opportunities. And if you guys know, I sign off everything with opportunities everywhere. I love people that look for opportunities. And he went from, basically he was listening to the radio as he was laying bricks. And there was a guy named Jimmy Kimmel, who was Jimmy, the sports guy on the radio. And they were going to, like, have this boxing match between one of the producers at the place and then also Jimmy. And so they wanted to have this boxing thing. And so he's like, hey, I'll train you how to box. Because in his spare time, he was a boxing coach. And so he even talked to me about how he found that gig. And so he waited at the radio station, and he found basically a back door, and he waited and waited and waited, and that relationship, and then other things that just kind of happened for him is because he put himself in the right place at the right time, and he asked. And so, like, I didn't want to talk about the Man Show. I didn't even bring up the Man Show. I didn't bring up Loveline. I just want to say, how did you become you, and what were some of the successes? And for that matter, I think the one thing I had heard is that he did an interview with one of my Edu heroes, Mike Rowe, and he was talking to him about how much he enjoyed shop class and all the things he took from shop class. And so I had a little bit on that too, because my dad was a shop teacher in the glory days of shop, and we had a few conversations around that too. So it was fun. It was a really fun time.
So Don, you have recently transitioned out of teaching to a full-time, basically, gig at your StartEdUp Foundation. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a bit about the foundation, and then how has that transition been?
Let me start with the last first. The transition has been, it's hard. I'd like to sometimes think of myself as being in the grandparent role, and that, grandparents can play with the grandkids and rile them up, and it's the parents' job to put them back to bed. I get to visit a lot of classrooms in the state, and I get to spend 1 or 2 periods with them and then leave. So I'm hoping that that's kind of easing the transition. No, essentially, the foundation, the state of Indiana really enjoyed what the class had done. And there's this thing called the Innovate Within pitch competition. It's an entrepreneur contest. And believe it or not, it's the biggest in the country. The payout is substantial for high school students. I mean, really substantial. And so, they had seen what we were doing there and like, hey, could you create that in more cities than just your neck of the woods? And my initial response was no. Because a lot of schools, and I'm not saying this in a mean way, a lot of schools are not into change. Yeah, they're into talking about really cool buzzwords. They'll use words like innovation and entrepreneurship, but it's taught from a book. And so what I came up with instead is like, we had done what we consider like to be a chapter model. We had started something where I would have students from more than just our high school come and meet once a month. And we do what we called reverse pitch competitions. So small local nonprofits, think opioid crisis center, homeless shelter, things of this nature. Mm-hmm. They would come and do a pitch deck on what they are and what they did and what they struggled with. And so the students would ask questions. They'd get into teams of 7 to 10, and they'd go into 3, 4, 5 different rooms and whiteboard for 35, 40 minutes. Rapid prototype a solution for them and do pitches. We'd have prizes, but for the most part, the kids like to know that some of our ideas were going to be implemented. And so we started to grow more chapters doing that across Indiana. Actually, we're now in 3 more states and growing. And then quarterly, we do boot camps and hackathons. Those are much longer events, but that's a higher level of interest in a student that even wanted to do a boot camp on. There's several things, especially in the tech industry, that you don't have to go to college for. You can go straight to industry. So there's a lot of tech companies that will want to sponsor and like, hey, could you throw a boot camp? And, because by the way, we never charge. So the students might come there and then learn these skills for 7-8 hours, enough to dip their toe into the deep end of the water and see, hey, this is something for me. And if it is, send them, their way. And if they're like, boy, this is terrible, it's not for me. Awesome. Good for you. And then with hackathons, like we had one on hacking generational poverty, and the kids got to learn a lot about, savings and checking and avoiding payday loans and stuff like that. So we came up with some solutions, and those are fun. And then obviously at the bottom of the funnel is growing and really making our pitch competition, Innovate Within, a robust thing. And then my favorite part, although this got ruined this year, but as things do with the health crisis, my favorite part is that, there's 9 regions in Indiana. So if you win your region, you win $1,000 and a trip and a summer workshop. First place is $20,000. And that's per kid. If it's a team of 3, we pay out all 3. No splitting.
Not a small amount of money.
It's huge. So it's $10,000 cash and $10,000 college to any college, private or public, as long as it's in our state. But my favorite part is taking them to other cities. The first year was New York City. Second year was San Antonio and Austin. This year was supposed to be Seattle. Oh man, we had we had so many cool things lined up, and it's at 95%. There's not, we're not going to be able to go. But
so before we get into what you're doing in response, because I think that's important, I'd love to hear. So, you've mentored tons of students. You've mentored tons of kids doing like some really cool stuff. I'd love to hear a couple stories of some of these kids that have really caught your eye. I know you have them, and I think it's inspiring to people to hear what kids can do when put in the situation where they're looking for opportunities like you tell them to do, and then giving them the framework, that entrepreneurial framework that you provide for them. Who's taken advantage of that and really run with it?
Actually, a student I just talked to today, he called me back haven't heard from him in a while. There's several, and I'll give some. Sometimes the big attractive ones that I've talked about in the past, it almost, I don't know, it seems like it's bragging. But some of the things that I'm also really proud of are just simple solutions, right? So a girl that wanted to cut down on light pollution in our town, she worked with local legislators to try to get less light pollution And what she learned is it's really expensive to retrofit all the actually, I learned a lot about exterior illumination. You know, the acorn lights shine up and not just down. Well, it's really like, it's just not economically feasible for a city to strip all those out and have downward firing Cobra head LED lenses. But she started to work on a program that she's trying to get it to where you can, you know, have like an Energy Star refrigerator or an Energy Star microwave. She's going to try to make it to where you can be an Energy Star neighborhood. That as you start developing new subdivisions, have them all LED downward firing head Cobra lenses. Not only good for the energy usage, but it's really good for the night sky. So things of this nature. Luke, this is one of our big sexier stories, but you know, Luke, actually it's two Lukes together, started a school in Africa. Like, he started a school, like raised the money and went out there and started building it. Now he works with schools. He's implementing a lot of things that he learned from the class. He's got his own thing now. He's right now working with like 8,000 students in Kenya.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Then there's, you know, like some things like just, you know, some apps that we got out there. But then even kids that like were just a part of this Innovate Within program. Like there's one student this year, I was like watching this, and he had a mic drop moment when they were doing a Q&A with him. They go, you know, what's some of the bigger things that you've, you know, faced this year? And he goes, oh, I can't keep up with our orders. If I win this money, I have to reinvest it in my company because things are going so well. So this kid made his own plexiglass greenhouse. He then dug and lined tanks to buy trout fry. And as the trout grow, they poop, and then he circulates the water out to his aquaponics lettuce bed. He's growing a couple 100 pounds of chard, butter lettuce, kale. And so the only thing, he gets up in the morning, he feeds his fish, they poop, and it makes lettuce. And then every 25 and a half weeks, he has it down to a science, every 25 weeks, he harvests the trout and wholesales them out.
Sure.
He's 17.
He's selling fish and vegetables.
And like, what were some others from this year? Like another student, you know, they made basically a almost kind of like there's like this glove that had like gears on it, and it constantly kind of worked and it vibrated and it had these gears and pulleys that it was working with their grandma's arthritis to keep her more limber, and it's things of that nature. And I'm always inspired because in a lot of ways you're like, you've mentored. Well, not really. Sometimes I just got out of their way and supplied them with contacts. Yeah. You know, sometimes they're like, hey, Mr. Wettrick, I really need to get a hold of this guy. Awesome. If there's one thing that we're good at, Mike and Glen, if you've taught for like, 5 years, you know, 2,000 families? Yeah. So, I mean, in some cases, just like, I need a favor. I'm like, check. Or I was good at project management. Like, we always set these 2-week goals because 2 weeks was always long enough time for you to realize that it was a bad idea and you should just stop and quit and pivot to something else. Mm-hmm. But it was also enough time for you to reflect and know how to move on if that was the right thing. So I just...
So cool. So, you know, and now we have the COVID-19 and everyone's kind of at home. And a lot of people's plans have changed. It's funny, you know, we're all working in different situations, but, you know, I'm working as hard as I've ever worked in my life. And Glenn is a tech coach, and now he's leading a whole staff that are all different levels of technology competency, you know, and you got to manage, you know, to help all of these different people all the time. And it's pretty incredible. And, you know, my wife's a kindergarten teacher trying to figure out how to teach kindergarten inquiry play-based kindergarten programming, you know, without being with her kindergarten kids. Like, I mean, it's hard. And I can imagine that, it's been a struggle because you've definitely done a lot of amazing work face-to-face with the kids, you know, in person. But in true, I think, Don Wettrick style, you're taking the lemons and you're making lemonade, friends. So tell us what you have going on, because we want to make sure we share it out and talk about it, because it is really cool what you're doing here.
Oh, thanks. I half jokingly, it was more than a month ago, had a podcast of, if this gets really bad, do you think that we'd go to all digital learning? And I like it was early in February at best, and I was like, there's no way we'll actually do that. And as things started progressing, I had some people like, hey, if we do, and some of these people that were like teaching labs, and so they knew they were going to have a hard time adapting if we did go to digital learning or e-learning. They're like, hey, this would be the time where we could do some innovation curriculum. Would you share some stuff with us? And I was like, oh, sure. And all of a sudden, the NBA season got canceled, and then this got canceled. I was like, uh-oh. And I think a mutual friend of ours, Jeremy, who's a principal out there in the UAE, and Jeremy Owens was like, dude, we just canceled. And so I was like, okay, we're probably a step behind. So I had this idea of like, all right, I couldn't necessarily go high-end entrepreneurship, but the how to think like an entrepreneur, how to find opportunities when everybody else is complaining about problems, and honestly even delve into how to have an opportunity mindset without being an opportunistic a-hole was also kind of on the forefront. Because, I mean, I didn't want kids to go like, hey, I'm going to buy toilet paper and resell it for 8 times the value or whatever.
I work for an online learning company, you know, and like they need us, but we also don't want to sell. So it's tough.
Right. Oh, man. Yeah. And so, like, I was like, okay, I can throw some stuff together. And then I start really thinking about it. I'm like, okay, if there's the one really cool thing I've been able to do is connect with really interesting people that had a passion for education, even though they weren't in education. And so the first thing that came to my mind was Stephen Kotler. His book had just come out. It's among my favorites. Him with Peter Diamandis. It's called The Future is Faster Than You Think. It's a mind-numbing book on where we're headed. And so I was like, Steve, crazy idea. I'm thinking about doing like this class for kids. And before I stop, he goes, I'm in. I'm like, really? He goes, I love it. Let's do it. I'm like, okay. I said, I'm just going to have a little 5 to 7 minute segment, and then I'll just Q&A you on some things. And I said, but I want to talk to you about, your work environment and flow states, because like right now, every kid's going to have a new work environment, i.e. they're going to be at home, and how to create a great flow state and how to create that success in the morning. And he's like, yep, let's do it. I said, all right, who else should I thinking about who else I should contact. And ironically enough, in the first chapter of Steve's new book, they start talking about flying cars. Uber Elevate is going to be soft launching. Actually, they already kind of soft launched in the UAE, and they're going to start in 2022 in New York and LA. And so I reached out to the founder and CEO of Uber Elevate, and he's like, yeah, let's do this. And I was like, no way. So I kind of matched up like what I already had in mind and who could speak to a little more authority than that. And I just put it out there. And ironically enough, like I had to, because I've had now more people say, hey, I didn't get back to you in time. Can I help you still? So I think I'm going to, even after the 10 days is over, I'm just going to kind of just call these people back and say, hey, speak to students on this genre or whatever. And then ironically enough, like I had a couple like, I don't know if I should say his name. There's another person I want on there, but it turns out that he has the same virus. So even some of my guests were like, yes, as soon as I'm over this, then I'll do it. So but yeah, we basically, we have kind of a private public thing. If you want to, you can go to our website, StartEdUpFoundation.org/OAE, standing for Opportunities Are Everywhere. And at minimum, there's just a public playlist there. You can press play and be done with it. But we had some teachers go, hey, my students want to meet some other students. And so we started a LinkedIn closed group. And that's been where I'm going to be putting my most excitement and passionate into, because I'm already starting to see some cross-pollination that I'm really excited about. So there's some people that there's some adults that were in industry that like, hey, can we be here as a mentor in Pekin? And so that's just starting. And then to be fair, like a lot of students are we released it last week, but there was a lot of students that have been on spring break that are just coming in. And then a friend of mine, Eric, we might, there's another, I shouldn't speak for people yet.
There's lots going on, man.
Well, like there's a platform that they wanted to host it and help out. But, you know, I wanted just to make sure that, you know, we weren't going to charge for it and there wouldn't be a paywall or anything else like that, because again, because I feel you, Mike, like there was a couple people that were already being snarky online and like, oh, all these EdTech companies are trying to take advantage. You're like, or maybe they're trying to help. Yes.
Well, yeah, you know, like Participate is a professional learning online platform. I mean, it's what people need in a lot of cases. So we're and
busy. I'll say this for you, so you don't have to. It was almost made for this moment.
It was made for this moment. Thank you.
I mean, like this is somebody I was just talking to. Like he was quoting Thanos, I guess. Full disclosure, I haven't seen this movie. It's the one where it's the last one that everybody. I don't know, but I guess
haven't watched it either. But I know what you're talking about.
But I guess he says that line, or no, maybe it was somebody that's fighting Thanos. I don't know, but supposedly this line goes, my whole life has been for this moment, and I think that there's several organizations that they don't like the position they're in, but they were built for this. And instead of being snarky and saying, oh, they're trying to, and I'm sure some of that's going on. I'm sure there's some profiteering going on, but for the most part, people just want to be helpful.
So we asked this question to all of our guests. You didn't get it the first time because it's been since the last time, but we love asking it. So Don, give us 3 pieces of media. They can be books, they can be video, they can be music, whatever. 3 pieces of media that are inspiring you, revving you up, something that has gotten you going the last little while, and share those with people so that they can take a look at them as well.
So I'm not pandering just because I just mentioned he was a guest on the class, but Bold by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler. I have a car that still has a CD player in it, and I haven't taken those CDs out in years, because every now and then when I need inspiration or I need some thoughts, I listen to Bold by Diamandis and Kotler. Other pieces of media. Believe it or not, I'm not going to say Tiger King. I refuse to watch it because everybody else has and is ruining it. But I just watched a really interesting documentary on Netflix, and it was my only guilty pleasure because I'm same as you. I've been slammed, but I watched American Factory.
Okay.
That was interesting, about the work ethic and differences between Chinese. Basically, a Chinese company had taken over a GM plant, and it was an really interesting look at our differences in cultures and work habits and ethic. It was eye-opening.
I was in China in December, and I had a lot to say about Chinese work ethic, and they get stuff done, man. It's crazy.
Well, and it was also an interesting take on, when you say basically they're in the movie they're trying to unionize, and they're like, yes, unionize in the sense of what we have in China, but not what you have here.
Yeah,
because
it's totally different.
In a socialistic kind of way, they're like, you're supposed to be for the good of the company and for the good of the country. So when you're making demands to work less and get paid more, that's counterproductive to every man should deserve what he earns. And so, like, if you're not working 15 hours a day, you're hurting the company and you should be fired. And you're like, whoa. 2 different takes on be careful what you wish for. Like, absolutely unionize under our circumstances. Always remind, like, be careful what you wish for. When you put a system in place, it's not just who's there that year; it's who's there afterwards. And at the same time, I felt terrible for some, because they had taken a lot of workers from China and had them move to Ohio, and like they weren't seeing their families ever. But in some strange way, they're like, this is the way. So it was kind of crazy. Third piece of media, I am first of all, I got to give kudos to you guys in your growth. Mad props. Seriously, you guys are doing it the right way. I love it. I love watching you guys just take off. But another one has been Shoes Fi, which stands for financial independence. I remember talking to this guy 3 years ago, and he was telling me, and he had like this graph, and he's like, okay, and by 2020, I should be averaging 1 to 1.5 million downloads an episode. And I'm like, okay. He did.
Okay.
They're huge.
Whoa.
They're huge. But they built this community. But the guys, it's a two-host thing. They are giving people the most practical advice on financial independence, which is the FI part, and that to achieve FIRE. And FIRE is financial independence, retire early. And these guys have all these great things about 450. Dude, I love financial planning. I didn't know what a 457 plan was. And it's only for cops and teachers, basically. And they have travel hacks on if you open up these 2 credit cards, you get this many, free miles. And if you do this, you can. These guys have made an art on being frugal and investing. And I can't sing enough their praises. They just provide value to their listeners. It's crazy. Which is where I think your trajectory is going. Like, you guys do a really no, seriously. No, you guys do a really killer job of being able to promote without being salesy, and just like, hey, here's some things that you should know. This providing value. So mad props to you guys.
Really appreciate it, man. So how can people connect with you, Don, and then also learn more about StartEdUp?
Yeah, I'd say I'm probably more active on LinkedIn than anything because people seem to be happier there.
True.
It's for sure. Just on, I'm on Twitter and Facebook like anybody else, but I probably will be quicker on LinkedIn, Don Wettrick. And then our foundation, StartEdUp Foundation.org. Again, the class is, that same one /OAE. And then, usual places. And then the podcast is still chugging along nice. Matter of fact, I've enjoyed teaching these classes so much. I may have to put some of them on. Today I just released the Jeff Hoffman one. Guys, like that guy, he started a company. He had missed, when he was younger, he had missed a flight. And he thought, you know what? If there was a faster way to get to my plane instead of the lady at the desk, I would have hit my flight. He ended up inventing the self-check-in kiosk at the airport. Has the patent on that. Then started Priceline.com, and then started. And then he had a lot of money. He's like, what else do I want to do? And he's like, you know what? People in music seem like they're having fun. So he helped launch NSYNC. He helped launch Destiny's Child. On any given day, you can check out Jeff's Instagram. He's like, today I'm hanging out with Pitbull. He's really good friends with... Dude, he looks like us. He's just an average middle-aged guy. And so, but this guy, Drew, just dropped nuggets of wisdom. And I'm like, I need to make this a podcast, not just a closed group lesson for kids. So
Amazing.
I just love people that are really, really... Oh, and get this. He basically has worked for the last 4 presidents, so Democratic or Republican, it has never mattered to him, but he's kind of in charge of entrepreneurship and expansion. And so every other year, he gets a large boat, let's call it a yacht, and he takes a bunch of entrepreneurship college students, and they go all around the coast of Africa, and they usually have 2-week assignments. He's like, get off the boat and help people start up sustainable businesses. Go. Expect nothing in return. Just go out and help people. Like, people like that, man. I get all sorts of ideas by people like that.
All day for stuff like that. All day for stuff like that, and all day for Don Wettrick. And we could probably go all day if we had the time, but we're not going to do that. The next time we're together, though, we'll talk more about this stuff. Don Wettrick, thanks so much for joining us.
Guys, thank you for having me. Sincerely appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to OnEducation. My name is Glenn Irvin. My co-host is Mike Washburn. OnEducation is part of the On Podcast Media Network. You can listen to this show and many others by great educators like Monica Burns, Mike Matera, Tisha Richmond, and many more by visiting onpodcastmedia.com. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at OnEducationPodcast.com. You can tweet us at OnEducationPod. Mike is at Mr. Washburn on Twitter, and I can be found on Twitter at Spanish. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/OnEducationPod. We're also on Instagram at OnEducationPod. Want to support OnEducation? Visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/OnEducation. There, you can get access to full videos of the podcast and so much more. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or a review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. It helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Classcraft, for supporting us. Check out classcraft.com/OnEducation to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening, stay awesome, and see you soon.